Well, Ashley, thanks so much for joining me today. I can't wait to talk about your new book. It's called No New Things, a radically simple 30-day guide to saving money, the planet, and your sanity. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Diane.
Absolutely. Okay. So I usually have people give a brief introduction of who they are, but let's just kind of jump into your story. Sustainability. Where did this passion start from?
Yeah, that's a great question. Sometimes I ask myself the same thing. I'm like, how did this happen? Because I was kind of leading a completely different life
Okay.
about, I would say 15 years ago. So I was a political strategist for about a decade. And in that career, which I really loved, I was working in government and then I was working at a political strategy firm. I had a variety of clients whom I could not choose for myself. You kind of get assigned clients
Yeah.
and was working on doing messaging for their campaigns and strategy and all that good stuff. And I at the same time became really personally passionate and interested in, I should say, sustainability.
Mhm.
And at the time I was like a little baby vegan, and that was kind of my gateway drug into sustainability and the intersection of like how we eat and what we wear and what we buy and how that impacts the planet and animals. And so I I just became so almost like consumed by it every day after work, which I found my job kind of unfulfilling. I was going home and finding ways to tweak my lifestyle to make it more sustainable. And that was really interesting to me. And it got to the point where I wanted to make it kind of my life and my life's passion and my job. So I at this time had found that all of these sustainable habits were things that were actually pretty easy and had like a huge ancillary payoff in my life. There were so many other things that were happening as I was instituting some of these more quote unquote sustainable swaps. I was saving money, I was getting healthier, my life felt less stressed. And I felt like I was being part of a solution to something that was pretty scary and a lot of times can make folks feel really helpless. And so I thought, why isn't this information like more accessible? Like why is eco-friendly living made to be so heady and cerebral and difficult as far as accessing that, or it looks really crunchy or it looks expensive or inconvenient. And so around 15 years ago, I left my career in political strategy and I didn't really have much of a blueprint for how I was going to get into sustainability. It certainly wasn't as popular of a topic or as prevalent as kind of a job opportunity as it is now. And I just knew I wanted to bring the messaging more mainstream. I knew I was at least good at messaging since I'd been doing that for a lot of my career. Um, and so I just started writing like pro bono articles for different media outlets around how to live a more eco-friendly lifestyle. And I did that for many years while also like cleaning toilets at a yoga studio and just kind of, I started completely from scratch. And then I started pitching television producers. I would find their contact information, on like Twitter, which sounds really stalkery now that I think about it. But I was really determined and tenacious and excited, and I didn't have contacts in those areas. I didn't have like formal public relations contacts or experience. And I just started messaging folks and trying to kind of be like, hey, make a pitch for, I could do a segment on showing folks how to find products that aren't tested on animals or how to reduce their grocery bill by eating more zero waste or whatever it was, and anything under the umbrella of sustainability. And then, a few years later, I got a producer here in Chicago who was like, all right, we had a cancellation for tomorrow. So if you can be ready to come on tomorrow at 7 a.m., I will let you on. And that was kind of my first foray into television around sustainability. Yeah. And then since then, I've done around 312 TV segments around eco-friendly living. So I feel like now you see more of those, but there really weren't a lot of folks talking about how to live a more sustainable life and making it accessible on television. So I guess that's my kind of early claim to fame there. But that's how I got into it. And I kind of built the bike as I rode it, essentially. And so I started consulting for companies who were interested in sustainability. I teach at a college level and a grad school level on marketing for sustainability. And then in 2018, my first book, I don't know if I can swear on here, but there's a swear word in the title, came out. And that was kind of like the eco-friendly handbook I'd always wanted when I began my journey.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so from there, it's kind of snowballed into, I just call myself a sustainability expert. It's a tidy way to get into that. But getting into sustainability and just me personally doing that completely upended and changed my life in a lot of really unexpected ways and positive ways.
Absolutely. I don't want to overlook something that
No.
was in the pitch of your book. It says for nearly 2 years, you challenged yourself to buy nothing new. I want to
Yep.
dive more into that because that is such a challenge. I want to know what were the specific rules? Because some people will have that rule and they're like, well, but side note, this is something that's allowed. So, what were the rules that you set up for yourself? And then how did that go?
Sure. Yeah. So no new things really started, again, just as a personal challenge in 2013, as I was just continuing to grow my own sustainable practices in my own home, in my own life. I thought, wouldn't it be fun? Now, most people are like, does she need psychiatric help? Because wouldn't it be fun? I don't know. Not everybody would think this is fun, but I thought, wouldn't it be fun to challenge myself to
Mm-hmm.
see if I could buy nothing new, with a few caveats, of course, for a month. That was the original intent, was just for 1 month. And
Okay.
really it was, I'm kind of someone, I'm not a masochist, but I'm kind of someone who likes to challenge myself to certain things. Can I
Yeah.
go without coffee for a certain amount of time, or can I, read every book on my bookshelf before I watch anything on television? These were kind of things that I was tasking myself with around that same time. And I thought this would really be a great way to stretch myself and put my sustainability values into action, and see if I adopt some new habits that are surprising to me. So the parameters were, I could pay my bills, of course. There's no getting out of that. And I could buy groceries and other essentials that are best purchased new. And especially in 2013, the secondhand market wasn't nearly as bustling as it is now, right? So finding things secondhand was a little bit more difficult. Nowadays, if I needed to buy certain toiletries or something, I could probably actually find a lot of them new and secondhand on different marketplaces. But
Yeah. Like
I
a buy
didn't have,
nothing group.
yeah, like a buy nothing group, or even, you can go on Poshmark and find cosmetics and things like that. You would otherwise, maybe if you weren't doing a no new things, you would go to Sephora or something to
Mhm.
find. So I had some of these caveats, and really it was just, you hear a lot of folks doing like no new clothes now, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
And I wanted to, I hadn't, in 2013, not a ton of people were doing no new clothes kind of stuff. And I just really wanted to expand that to every other aspect of my life. So everything from, if I needed a folder for work, if I needed something for my home. So the caveats really were bills, obviously. I could spend money on experiences. So a gym membership, or going to the museum or the ballet, or, trips, whatever, the less tangible things that aren't things.
Mhm.
And I could also spend money on groceries, eating out, donations, and then those essential things that are best purchased new, like underwear or menstrual care, whatever, made sense. And obviously pet care and taking care of the people and the creatures in my household as well. I wasn't sitting there going, nope, we're not going to the vet for a month because I'm doing no new things. Those were the exceptions.
Mhm.
And I really only was going to do it for 1 month. I just kind of wanted to see if I could do it. And the first week was kind of painful, I would say, just because it was a shifting of how I thought about things. Even in 2013, I think we were all less conditioned to online shop. It was more difficult to online shop. Things were less immediate as far as how they'd arrive to you. It just wasn't as much a part of how we operated as it is today. But I still found I had that impulse that if I needed something or wanted something, I immediately was going to the store, or I was going online to find it. And so having to sort of change the way I thought about getting my needs met was a really interesting and a little bit uncomfortable exercise for the first week. And then
Mhm.
after the first week, I started to absolutely see fiscal savings. Like, I mean, who'd have thought when you don't buy a bunch of shit you don't need,
Yeah.
you actually see, like, your money doesn't drip away as much as it usually does.
Mhm.
And I felt less stressed. I think you probably hear this a lot from folks who come on your show, because we're calling podcast shows. I'm saying this is a show here.
Yeah.
that the things that we have, the things we own us, and we're like the inventory manager of those things throughout the life of those things being with us. And having fewer things and acquiring fewer things in your life and being less caught up in the pursuit of browsing and buying and, merchandising things in your life really does alleviate a ton of stress and frees up a lot of space in your brain.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so in your book, you have three different parts to it.
Mm-hmm.
It is get to know new things. How did we get here? And then the 30-day challenge. So I really like how you break it up into 30 days for people. It's sometimes I feel like that's more digestible, especially for moms. Like we don't have a ton of time, so it's just nice to have a few pages to read every day. But anyways, all that to say, I want to just touch on something in part 2. Consumerism is contagious. That's one of the chapters there. Why do you think that is true?
I mean, it's by design. Part of the reason why I structured the book the way I did is I didn't just want to have it be a 30-day guide. I think that the 30-day guide is certainly super important. Like you said, easily digestible, hopefully easy to execute on for folks to feel like they're getting somewhere in those 30 days or that 1 month. But I think a really important part of Know New Things and just generally adopting this mindset is to pull the curtain back on consumption in the West and specifically in the United States. My grandmother lived to be 109, and she would wash and reuse tin foil and steal biscuits from the buffet, and so how did we go from being people who bought things very intentionally, repaired those things, kept them for a really long time in pretty good repair, to people who literally go online and impulse shop crap that is shoddily made, can never be repaired, and will hit the landfill. So much so that we buy so many things that we forget that we've even bought them. Like so many people actually have like loads and loads of stuff that they've bought and they completely forgot that they even purchased those things. And so I was really intrigued by this, and in teaching marketing for sustainability and having been in marketing roles as well at different Fortune 500 companies, this is all by design. Psychology started to be used in marketing campaigns back in the early 1900s, right around the time when industry began to ramp up. And then after World War II, we see a huge ramp up and pivot in industry where instead of making wartime wares, we are now shifting those factories to make things that are more like convenience goods or luxury goods like dishwashers and televisions and, just futuristic things that folks had never even conceived of before. We're starting to see new makes and models of things come out more frequently. So it used to be like, for instance, the Model T, which is like the infamous car in the United States. It used to only come in one type and one color, black. And unless it was a really meaningful change to the operation of the vehicle, there really weren't many changes made. Now, when we see cars every year, it's a new make and it's a new model of the car. It's a new kind of iteration of the car. It's a new iPhone. We see so many different versions come out. And oftentimes the changes between those versions are so insignificant. And it really is just yet another marketing ploy to get us to upgrade what we already have, even if what we already have works just fine. So that's an interesting shift. And then at that same time that industry is doing all this, marketing is starting to go, hey, and we have so many more people who now are owning television sets in the United States, especially if you look at post-World War II to the 60s, the amount of television sets in homes it's a meteoric rise. It's crazy. And you also have a lot of women who were working in factories during World War II, and then they were kind of unceremoniously booted from those jobs because men were coming back from war. So they ended up being home a lot of the times. Kind of, I call them like captive consumers. They were a really captive audience who could, be marketed to all day long on television, through magazines, for things to ask their husbands to buy things that they never had been interested in before. So that's just a little bit of a dive into what was going on in marketing at that time, and also in production, because you have to have industry make these goods to sell them to us. And then you need to have advertising and marketing to advertise and market them to us. And specifically as women, we have long been the dream population to market to. We hold a significant amount of consumer purchasing power, not just in the United States, but globally. We're actually trending to be globally the number one most influential consumer purchasers in the world, because a lot of times we're our heads of household. We purchase for everyone at home. So marketing, especially, I would say in the United States, invests a lot of money in understanding what women want or how we want to feel or what we aspire to be. And so that's why I think it's really important. In a way, No New Things is a radical approach, because it's helping to unyoke us a little bit from this consumerist swirl that especially women are very much targeted into staying in. So that was just a little background.
No, I love
a little background on that, because that's something that we're never taught. That's something that we never hear about. And a lot of those women post World War II were extremely lonely. They went from being in kind of these communal living situations and factories where they really worked towards something with their peers, to being at home and isolated in the suburbs. They were lonely, and their husbands a lot of times felt like strangers to them. This is also a part of the narrative that we never learn. We see like the happy sort of 1950s housewife, but we never hear about the other side of that as much. And so we, especially as women, have been conditioned to be the ideal consumers in the United States. And they leverage everything psychologically and also conditionally. They pull a lot of levers. So I'm not sure if you've seen some of the research that's come out around malls, like shopping malls. I'm dating myself a little bit, but
no, what is the research?
When I was growing up, the shopping mall was like the place to be. My parents would not let me loiter at the mall. It made me uncool to not be able to go to the mall, but going to the mall was like the thing before the internet. Well, malls are intentionally designed to have, one, no windows. So you lose track of time because you're not getting the natural light, you're not hearing the natural sounds, and you're gravitating toward the artificial light that's unnaturally bright in the stores, especially in the displays that highlight the merchandise. Malls are notoriously cold. I grew up in Texas. We would go to the mall just to get enjoy that free air conditioning that was blasting in the summer. And they're notoriously cold because studies show that when you are cold, you make less intentional, less well thought out decisions. You make more impulsive decisions. So think about I was just in a movie theater and it was freezing in there. And I was like, I need to eat, I need a snack. You're just immediately grocery stores, movie theaters, malls, places where you are designed to consume things, or they hope you will consume things, are kept very cold because they know that you'll make poorer decisions if you're cold. If you're hungry, if you've received a tax return or a refund, if the weather is crummy where you live, what's the level of sunshine? These are all factors that marketers look at when they're sending you advertisements, push notifications, all that stuff. They're looking at time of day because they know that certain times of day, your energy might be dragging. You might be at the office and you're feeling crummy. You might be with your kids and they're driving you crazy, and you're just more likely when you're spread thin and feeling stressed out in those times to impulse purchase something. So all of those levers are like Valentine's Day, right, is an emotional lever that marketers pull all the time, because whether you're single or you're partnered up, there's so much consumerist expectation around that particular day and the ceremony around that. So every kind of factor you can pretty much think of, marketers know about. So I've almost I've gotten so far away from your question, but
no, this is great. This is great. I think it is interesting because going back to the history, we have these marketers, and I say this when you step foot into a Target, they're always making you feel as if you don't have enough. It's like every week we're going to present you with something when you come in here for groceries, or just something that you do actually need. Yeah. We're going to show you what you don't have, and it's not enough, and you're not enough. And so marketers' jobs are to point out the voids that you have to fill. And instead of community and healthy options filling those voids, it's like, no, you need this thing. And so I think with the presentation of television commercials, or just how people were marketed to, you said women maybe went a little bit more inward and they were feeling lonely. It's like, yeah, because maybe things were being pointed out to us that we didn't really care about. And then once they're pointed out, it's like, if we dwell there, then we don't feel like we have enough.
100%. I mean, us not marketing hinges on us not feeling like we are enough, or
Mhm.
we have enough, or we have the right things, or we have enough of a particular thing, or we have too much of a particular thing. All of those perceived, and I would say prescribed deficits
Mhm.
are exactly where marketing hinges on. I mean, think of even the tactics like FOMO, fear of missing out, limited time only. Think of the
Mhm.
influencers who, and every social media platform, which is monetized to the hilt. Every single
Yeah.
social media platform we spend time on is either pushing advertisements to us or it's showing us influencers who are pushing things to us, whether we know it or not. Like, I mean, stealthy marketing where I could have, the latest greens product or something just in the background. That's the latest kind of stealthy way to market to people, because if you see it,
Mhm.
your brain's going to go, oh, that's interesting, what is that, and so I don't want to say every marketer is a terrible person and every marketing department's out to dupe you. That's not
Yeah.
necessarily the case, but I think it's really important to know that it's a pretty insidious practice that has used psychology for a very long period of time, almost like, 100 years at this point, to really pull those levers to get us to spend. And it wouldn't be as big of a deal if we had a break from it and if we had the ability to take a breath and discern if what we're seeing is propaganda and what we're seeing is actually something that we genuinely might need. But now, and the numbers are kind of all over the place because we get advertisements from every angle. It's estimated we receive 2,000 to 10,000 advertising and marketing impressions a day per person. That's a ton. That's a ton of space in your brain. That's a ton of decision fatigue. And that's a ton of subconscious programming that we're seeing all the time. And then we're internalizing that. So I've even seen it with myself. And I feel like I've kind of deconditioned myself to be at least a little less susceptible to some of it. But sometimes I'll see an ad like, it used to be you'd get 7 impressions. That was the rule that marketers would abide by, the rule of 7. You
Oh.
have 7 times for someone to see or interact with your brand in an advertising context before they will actually buy it. Now, because our attention spans are so much shorter
Mhm.
and the advertising landscape is so overcrowded that everybody's competing with each other, that 7 has gone to a wild number. Some large retailers will operate on, you need 100 impressions. So you and I and all your listeners are constantly being bombarded. I mean, think of even like ads that you see on social media. How many times is someone hawking this thing? Why am I seeing it in every sidebar ad? Why am I seeing why am I hearing it about it? And it's not something that would even be germane to your life. You wouldn't
Mhm.
even necessarily need it. So it's difficult to get a break from this, and we really don't. And that's why it's tough to take a step back and go, whoa. And so a lot of No New Things, the kind of initial steps in the book for the first week and even into the second week are muting, unsubscribing, putting a stop to a lot of those notifications, those things that create less friction in the buying process, and making it more difficult for you to be susceptible to those messages and for you to actually engage in the buying process. It's a way to kind of step back. You have to, unfortunately, it's so much a part of our society. I mean, think about it. Advertising is such a part of how we live that you actually have to pay to remove advertisements from any of your streaming services, any of your entertainment content. You have to pay extra to remove the ads from it. That's how just ubiquitous it is in the way we live. And so if you have to, then it's up to us that we have to create the barriers to go, okay, how
Mhm.
do I cut down on some of this noise? I
Mhm.
can't control the things that come into my mailbox or the billboards I see on the road as I'm driving, but I can control what's coming into my inbox, what's coming onto my phone, what's on my television, my devices, that kind of stuff.
Well, it's funny because, like you said, you've gotten pretty good at navigating these temptations, we'll say. I feel the same way. And yet, as you're talking, I'm recognizing that we'll say even 5 to 8 years ago, advertising is incredibly different. I used to see something on the television, which I don't really ever watch television, but you would see these airbrush perfected women. And I was aware of that. I'm like, oh, that's not reality. Like, that's not actually going to work. That product won't work on my skin that way. But now you have these influencers that look relatively like, if you're following people that look relatively like yourself or similar, and you see up close what these products are doing to them, I feel incredibly impulsive about that because I'm like, oh, that's a real woman. She's not being airbrushed. This product seems to work for her. So why would it not work for me? So I think that even the people that are trying to combat this, it's just getting even more tricky to withstand.
Yeah, absolutely. You hit on something really, I think, timely. Television, I also don't watch that much television anymore, but I do consume content on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. That's kind of my new television, right?
Mm-hmm.
And therein, you have a lot of people who you see yourself in, or you
Mm-hmm.
hope to, those parasocial relationships. Like, we don't know. I mean, yeah, you and I probably know some people from the internet because we've become friends with them,
Yeah.
but most of us don't freaking know these people, right? And
Mm-hmm.
but yet we feel close to them. We feel a kinship with them. We trust them. Like, there have been studies out there, polls that show that average Americans really have a ton of trust in influencers, people whom they've never met, people for whom they see only a highlight reel of life. And even then, what we see, we just don't know how true or authentic that actually is. So it's discerning people like you and me. It's people who we would consider ourselves pretty smart, pretty savvy. You know, we're dwelling in this realm of decluttering and minimalism and trying to make our lives more efficient and better and purposeful.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we're very susceptible to it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it's just,
I know
I hate
it can
it.
be scary.
I hate it. I'm saying this because I'm in full transparency. I'm like, I've purchased a few things in the last couple of months. And I'm like, damn it. Why did I do that? That was so stupid. And I was sold to. And I'm like, I thought I couldn't be sold to.
No, but it's not. But when the reason why I talk a lot about the history of
Mm-hmm.
consumerism, especially in the United States,
Mm-hmm.
is because it's really not your fault.
Mm-hmm.
I talk to so many people who say, oh, it's all my fault. I just have no willpower. And it's
Yeah.
like, sure, there is a certain amount of willpower or agency that goes into you hitting the add to cart button. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, I'm not going to, lie and say that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
But this has been so conditioned. I call it conditioned consumerism, and in some cases coerced consumerism, because it is such an insidious part of just the operating system of the West, I would say, but especially in the United States, and such a big part of just how we live.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's not a bug, it's a program feature. This is Americans like buying things is a patriotic act
Mm-hmm.
in the United States
Mm-hmm.
and other places too, but the book really focuses on the US just because that's where I am. But yeah, it really is a patriotic act. And after World War II, that's how it was framed. So all that propaganda during World War II that was telling people, grow victory gardens and mend your clothes and carpool because that's good for the war effort. All of that really heavy messaging changed and said, now that we've won the war, what do victors do? What do victors who have money do? What is the American dream? And all of it changed. And that's when we see fast fashion, like people can buy clothes right off the racks that fit them. That's when we see people eating meat at every meal. We see 2-car garages. We see bigger homes. We see the rise of plastic, which was a material that really wasn't used much, but because convenience and kind of living better in the future became a really big messaging and selling point of a prosperous American, we start to see also the proliferation of plastic everywhere. Because people don't want to wash dishes unless you've got a cool, expensive new dishwasher. You want to throw stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
You want to have things be disposable. So all of this is part of who we are. It's since you and I have been born, this is the conditioning that we were in. So it's really not about willpower, because you're kind of in a way helpless to a lot of these influences and conditioning. And that's one thing I tried to do with the No New Things kind of ethos in 30 days was really to get you in a place where, as much as you're able to, not to insulate yourself, but to kind of shift some of that conditioning so that you can have the quiet, maybe relative quiet. You can have some of the space, the breathing room to go, hold up, now that I'm not bombarded by all this all the time, what do I really want? What do I actually want? What do I actually need? Because we can't even determine needs and wants anymore. That's like, I mean, I'll go online and be like, I need this. And it's like, girl, what? I temporarily joke myself into thinking I need things or that things are necessities when they are actually not. And having to get your needs met in alternative ways, like in No New Things, is a really great pause that helps you to get that perspective of like, oh, holy smokes, I don't actually need that. Or I have something that could work just fine for what I need, instead of just, I'm initially buying something because I think I need it.
Yeah. I think the challenge to me having this conversation, I have a cabinet of my supplements and protein powders. And
Love
just this past week, I had another collagen powder delivered. And it's like, you're not even going through and like testing, did this one work? Are you noticing a difference? You're just like, oh, this one seems to work. So my challenge to myself is get through that cabinet and then you're allowed to try something new if it doesn't work. Like, it's just little things like that. Kind of like you said, have I read all the books on my shelf before I watch White Lotus? I was reading Ina Garten's memoir and I told myself last night, I was like, you're not allowed to watch the new episode until you finish this book. And I ended up finishing the book. I didn't get to the episode because I was too tired, but I did finish. And I was like, that is the challenge to myself, because I say I want to read more and yet the other things grab your attention.
100%. I mean, I think that you hit on a really good thing too. And there are a few days in the book, especially in the second and third weeks, which do really focus on using up what you already have, like going through your stuff, using what you already have before you buy replacements. Because we're human beings. We have a built-in kind of scarcity mindset where we're like, oh my God, I'm getting low on collagen. I need to restock. I can't be without it for a day. That would be a nightmare. And I'm not parodying you. I'm just saying, like, I do the same thing. I'll be like, my face oil, oh God, it's getting low. And what happens if I can't get it at the store? And then what am I going to do? You know, so I have like 6 of them or something. And it's really just testing folks or encouraging folks to look at what they have, which, if the average woman, if you go into your bathroom and you look at your beauty products. I used to be a Sephora VIB junkie, you know, all that stuff. And I had so many things and then realized I've never in my entire life finished a lipstick, you know, like never. I have like 70 of them, you know, and so it's a matter of looking at what you have, determining, am I not using this because it broke me out? It looks bad. I don't like it. Ethically offloading those to other places, other people who might use them, and then really just moving through the stockpile that you already have before you buy new stuff. But we're all, again, restocking is another huge marketing tactic and also a logistical tactic that's used by retailers. I mean, look at like Subscribe and Save, where you're getting things. A subscription model is absolutely, I would say, one of the things that is like fast tracking people to debt, and businesses freaking love it. I used to work for a subscription based company, and our internal motto, which sucks, and I talk about it in the book, but it was easy, easy, hard. And it was easy to sign up and subscribe, easy to forget that you've signed up and subscribed, and hard to cancel. That, I mean, and anyone who's gotten like a subscription box or something like that knows this is true. You get a subscription to something, you're stoked about it, and then you get it and you're like, oh yeah, I got that subscription box. Totally forgot about that. I need to cancel that. And then when you go to cancel it, if you even continue to remember to, they make the process super arduous and they do whatever they can to get you to not cancel because they want to keep you in their ecosystem. So then they'll be like, what about 30% off next month? Or what about 2 extra gifts or whatever? And then we're like, okay, I mean, I guess that sounds like a good deal. Maybe I'll cancel next month. And
or so, pause for 3 months or pause for 2 months. And then you forget and then you're charged. Not that that's happened to me.
Oh, girl, it literally happens all the time to me. Totally. And so it's a real succubus to people's finances. But it's a model that's designed to kind of play on people's concern that they're going to run out of things. And in some cases, it's good. Like pet food, send it to me automatically because that's great. Toilet paper, thank you. You know, but then other things like, do I need perfumes, like new selections of perfumes every month? Probably not. Would it be nice? Yeah, but like I've already got 5, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, this has been wonderful. The only other thing I wanted to touch on, maybe just briefly before we wrap up, your book goes into your super smart system for smarter consumption, practical tips to curb impulse shopping, alternative activities for fulfillment, so much in there. But one thing I want to touch on that kind of goes back, honestly, even to what you were talking about when in the early 1900s, again, this loneliness epidemic amongst women because we feel like we don't have, the void isn't being filled. I want to talk about how borrowing and sharing can build community and fill that void and kind of get ahead of those marketers.
Absolutely. Love it. Well, you touched on the super system. So I'll just say, like, part of No New Things is finding alternative ways to get your needs met.
Yeah.
So instead of a capitalistic way of I'm buying something new from a retailer, the super system stands for S, secondhand. So getting something secondhand. You, that's upcycling, repurposing, reimagining something you already have. P is paying nothing. So that's getting something through a buy nothing group, finding it on a stoop, someone gives it to you, that type of thing. E is experiences. That really has to do more with gifting or recreation for yourself. So non-tangible experiences instead of things. And then R is renting, borrowing, or sharing. And so I think that dovetails nicely into you talking about renting, borrowing, and sharing because, you know, we used to be a culture that literally survived off of resource sharing. I mean, that's how people not just had relationships, but also how they survived. Things were so expensive to be made back before we were this heavy industrialized nation and world, really, that not everybody had a riding lawnmower or a personal computer or whatever it was, right? Not everybody had a television set or a radio. And so we would resource share as a community. Mm-hmm. Or as communities. Now that things have become cheaper to produce and cheaper to buy, we also have that ethos of, well, I have to own it myself because it's chintzy to borrow from my neighbor, you know, or it's tacky. And I remember I did a TV segment on No New Things during the pandemic, and it was a local Chicago segment. And I got like 20 people messaging me saying how gross and tacky it was that I suggested that, you know, maybe if you're having a party and you need 70 champagne flutes, you ask your neighbors if they might have some that you can borrow for the evening, or you go and rent them. Some people thought that was really heinously tacky. Like you're going to be the neighborhood succubus because you asked to borrow those things.
Oh, I thought you were going to say it was because it was COVID and people were like, sharing germs.
No, not at all about that. They thought it was gross and tacky and cheap.
Outrageous.
Oh, yeah. And somebody actually said it was shameful. And I thought, wow, because I'm sure you have a similar experience. In my buy nothing groups, in my free groups, and just in my friend and family networks, I get so much satisfaction sharing with people, like sharing things with people. Mm-hmm. I get so much joy knowing a friend is going to wear a dress to an event that has brought me a lot of joy. I get so much joy, you know, borrowing something from someone, and that reciprocal experience gives both the recipient and the giver a lot of satisfaction because we are in a loneliness epidemic. I mean, the Surgeon General says that loneliness is as detrimental to our health as smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. Mm-hmm. That's pretty freaking serious. And having some kind of connection with other people where you feel like you can help them and they can help you, it builds trust. It builds lines of communication that we don't have because we're increasingly in more of an isolationist society where we sort of just do our own things a lot. And so it's building community. And that's really something that we desperately need, just not just as human beings, but I think as people existing today. So re-engaging in a circular model of sharing things and borrowing things is not just good for the planet and our wallets. It's good for our health. It's good for our mental health.
Yeah. And it helps loosen the grip on your things as being so special, irreplaceable. To me, I'm like, you need to shift from that mindset. That's what I've tried to do with Minimalist Moms, with my book, with what I'm continuing to do. Your things are just things. Sure, you have a few favorite things, but when my friend lent me her tablecloth, or I've let people borrow such and such, or when I'm decluttering my daughter's clothes and I get to see that second life, or I
Yeah.
sell a dress that I bought for 50 for $5 to a friend. All those things, again, just kind of help you release that hold that your things have over you. So I think that that's a benefit in itself.
That's a great point. I mean, it
Mhm.
absolutely, I think like it's a free and easy way to build connection and get so many other benefits like you just talked about.
Mhm.
And we need that. And especially as women, I think we need like community touch points. You know, we need each other. We need other people to feel that we can rely on and also help. It's good all around. But being in an overconsumption swirl takes us out of that.
Absolutely. Well, again, there was so much talked about here. I love talking with you, and I feel like we could just talk about this topic for many more hours.
Right back at you.
Yeah. Well, until then, where can listeners grab a copy of your book and connect with you online to hear more?
Well, thank you, Diane. Listeners can grab a copy of my book wherever they usually get books. There's an audiobook version, an ebook version if you want a less thingsy version of that. And it should also be at most libraries, and you can request it there too. And then I'm on Instagram. That's probably where I'm most busy. And that's Ashlee Piper at Instagram.
Perfect. Well, the final question that I'm going to ask you is, what does it mean to you to live a life with clear intentions?
It's a great question. And I've been ruminating on it a little bit, thinking about it, because I think you actually said something that really touches on how I feel about it, which is the less I value my stuff. And that's not to say I don't value my things and I don't take good care of them. I would say like minimalists in a way almost very much value their things because they're so discerning about what they do welcome into their lives. But when you deprioritize stuff as not the apex of your life, like not having things as a way of as a means of status or as a means of your self-worth, you get so much clearer on who you are and what you want to do in this world, like what you want to do in this existence. And it happened for me. Not only did I save a ton of money and paid off debt and, you know, got a promotion at work, like all these other ancillary benefits of kind of living in this way, but I felt like I knew myself so much better. And I knew how I could be more purposeful because I didn't have all that noise and mental clutter and also physical clutter. And that's the biggest gift to me. I got really clear on who I was and what I wanted to do and be.
So good. Ashlee, thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. Thank you for starting this conversation and being a large voice, being a
Thank you.
strong voice in this area. I just appreciate you joining me today.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. This has been great.